Arsenal have a problem. Their hopes for a Premier League title are fading, and in their biggest game of the season, Man City gave them a reality check. How is Mikel Arteta going to respond? Well, let's find out the truth behind Arsenal's collapse. Does Arteta believe Arsenal can bounce back? Which midfielder do Arsenal have an agreement with? And what other changes do Arsenal need to make? Yo, what is going on, guys? My name is Babs14. Welcome back to your boys channel. And Arsenal fans, I know right now it's very difficult, but the only thing we can do is break it all down and look to the next step. So as per, smash a like on the video if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and help your boy on his road to 200,000 subscribers. But starting off with Arsenal's reality check. Arsenal versus Man City at the Etihad Stadium was always going to be the game of the season, our biggest test of our title credentials. And we were up against a super team in the semi-finals of the Champions League, finals of the FA Cup, and two-time reigning champions going for a three-peat. These guys are no joke. And in this game, the Arsenal players, the Arsenal fans, and the Arsenal manager all found out. 1-0 down after 5 minutes. In the first half, it easily could have been more goals. Man City utterly dominated Arsenal. And even though the John Stones goal does look offside, reality was Man City deserved to win this game, and comfortably. And the XG sums it up. Man City 2.42 to Arsenal 0.48. But the overall stats are a bit weird. Both teams on an equal amount of possession and passes completed. Arsenal had more final third entries, but less expected threat created. But in the grand scheme of the season, Arsenal were nowhere near their best. And as this graphic shows, in terms of XG, shots on targets, field tilt, deep touches, progressive passes, and progressive carries, by far one of Arsenal's worst games. Despite Arsenal having a fair share of their ball, they weren't able to make anything. And that's because Pep Guardiola changed his tactics. He surprised Mikel Arteta, where in the past game at the Emirates, Arsenal went man-to-man against Man City, and it was somewhat successful. They were causing a lot more issues and could have easily scored more goals. And even after that game, Pep Guardiola and Jack Grealish admitted that Arsenal were the better team. But this game was a different story. Pep Guardiola changed the way he played. He realised how good Arsenal are in terms of pressing. And even after the game, Kevin De Bruyne admits that they were weary of the Arsenal press. As De Bruyne says, normally we play two number 8s, but Pep wanted more control, so we were playing a double 6 with Gundogan, and if Partey or Xhaka press, I would occupy the space in behind. Often Man City play a 4-3-3. This game it was a 4-2-4. Gundogan and Rodri in midfield, and De Bruyne and Haaland playing as almost a strike partnership. Guardiola realised that Arsenal are an aggressive team in terms of pressing, and that leaves space in behind Xhaka and Partey, and that's why he wanted De Bruyne and Haaland to target. The passing network sum it all up. De Bruyne and Haaland side by side, and for Arsenal they could not cope. Gabriel and Rob Holding all over the place, and Arsenal's entire system became disjointed. In the first half, Mikel Arteta was out-tacticked. It's the first time this season that we've seen Arsenal so open at the back. Every time Arsenal were pressing, they were unsuccessful, and that's because Man City kept on going long. And when you've got that powerhouse up front, you've got a different way of playing. Very few times have we seen Guardiola play this way, but he knew more than anyone the quality of this Arsenal team when they press, and ultimately he found a solution. In the second half, Mikel Arteta made somewhat of a change, and Arsenal were able to slow the game down. And that's why, as the field tilt shows, in total Arsenal had a fair amount of 47%, and in the second half sustained some pressure, but ultimately it was too little too late. The damage was already done. And when Arteta was asked on if he was tempted to change the approach going into the game, he says, "We wanted to tweak a few things, but they were able to execute and score an early goal. You have to understand that where we're coming from, we have to be loyal to what has brought us here all this way. We've done it in the past in different ways, and that doesn't guarantee you anything. It's time to look into the mirror at what we could have done better. I am the first one, and go into the next game." We often praise Mikel Arteta and his elite tactical ability. He is the guy that's got Arsenal fighting for a title in the first place, but he also has to be held accountable. Yes, against Pep Guardiola, it's never easy to win a tactical battle, but it's in those past few games against Liverpool, Southampton, and against West Ham. When Rob Holding wasn't quite working out, why go into the biggest game of the season and expect for that same system that has not worked in 3 games to somehow turn up against the best team in the league? Mikel Arteta has built an elite system, but that requires elite personnel. And when you don't have William Saliba available and you've got Rob Holding, he needs to become a little bit more adaptable and find different ways of winning. And he will know that more than anyone. Ultimately, in this game, the Arsenal defense was all over the place. And whether you want to look at Rob Holding, Gabriel, Zinchenko, or even Ben White, the absence of William Saliba was felt once again. With him in the team, Arsenal conceded 0.98 goals per game. Without him, it's nearly doubled to 1.86 per game. With Saliba, Arsenal are elite. Without him, we are not. And even in terms of the win rate, with Saliba, it was 77.8%. Without him, it drops all the way down to 40%. And it's not just in terms of defensive ability, it's also about on the ball. Man City were trying to suffocate Arsenal with their own press. And where in that past game, you've got William Saliba who's able to give himself extra time. That that's where Arsenal are always going to have a problem with Rob Holding. He is nowhere near as technically secure, and he does not have the elite ability like a Saliba to slow it down under pressure, take the extra touch, and maybe even carry out of the back. But you also have to talk about the midfield. Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard and Granit Xhaka have received so many flowers this season, but in this game here, Man City were playing them apart, and that once again comes down to pressing. Every time City pressed the Arsenal midfield, they were unable to turn. And then you compare that to the opposite side. Every time Arsenal tried to press City, a profile like Ilkay Gundogan was able to turn. And this game was all about beating that press. Arsenal weren't able to do so, and City were doing it way too easily. It just shows that Arsenal need that type of ball carrying profile, and why Mikel Arteta has targeted the likes of Moises Caicedo and Declan Rice. These two are both fantastic ball carriers. City were able to overload the right hand side of Odegaard and Saka because they realised that on that left hand side, Xhaka does not have that same ability to be a threat, and that's where they were able to stop Arsenal getting the ball into the final third. The likes of Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli weren't even in this game because Arsenal could not progress the ball. What we saw in this game was the aura that Man City have that Arsenal simply don't. But you also can't forget about the inexperience. Man City are a team full of players that have won titles, players that have played in important Champions League games, that have won trophies galore, and these guys have the experience of being in these sort of title races. And then you have Arsenal with an average age of 24.4. Often us as fans are quick to praise the fact that we have such a young team, but this game was the downside of the Arsenal players not having the experience of being in these games and not knowing how to survive. It's not a surprise that in the second half, when Arsenal threw on Jorginho and Trossard a bit more experience, Arsenal were able to find some level of control. This Arsenal squad has so much potential and it will go big places, but in a game like this up against experienced winners of players that have been there and done that, they were somewhat naive and they played into Man City's hands. There's no denying how great Arsenal have been this season, but in these past 4-5 games, it's been a massive reality check. The mistakes that we have made, the leads that we have bottled. When you're fighting for a top 4 place, you can do these type of things, but when you're fighting for a title up against a monster like Man City, these guys will punish you. There's no point of having a meltdown. The only thing us fans can understand is where Arsenal got it wrong, and Mikel Arteta will know that more than anyone. But what are your honest thoughts on his performance? Who do you believe needs to be held accountable? And do you believe this Arsenal team will be able to bounce back? Let's move on to Arsenal's midfield targets. Despite all our focus being at the Etihad and Arsenal's title decider, at the same time there was a game going on elsewhere, as Nottingham Forest beat Brighton 3-1, and with that defeat, it mathematically confirms that Arsenal are back in the Champions League. For the first time in nearly 6 years, the Champions League anthem will be played at the Emirates Stadium. We missed out on it last season, and it was our main objective this season. And in that aspect, we've been successful. And Arsenal are now about to enter a very important phase. Brand new doors are about to be opened. And here you had the Arsenal owner Josh Kroenke, who was seen in attendance for the game at the Etihad. And now it's over to these guys to prove to Arsenal fans their true ambitions. We've waited 6 years to return to the Champions League, and prior to that, during the years of Arsene Wenger, these guys were accused of not being proactive spenders. But since then, things have changed. They have bought Arsenal outright. They've invested in Mikel Arteta's project. And this summer is going to be the prime opportunity to do it once again. And according to David Ornstein, Arsenal have 4 midfield targets, with interest in Declan Rice, Moises Caicedo, Mason Mount and Mohamed Kudus. Ornstein says that Arsenal are looking to sign either Rice or Caicedo for the 6, with either Mount or Kudus as a number 8. And Ornstein adds the Kroenkes will continue to invest in the team, not resting on their laurels after Arsenal's qualification back to the Champions League was mathematically confirmed. The funds are going to be available, the targets are there, and that number 6 profile of Declan Rice, Moises Caicedo, both would definitely elevate the Arsenal team. And Moises Caicedo is a player that, according to Fabrizio Romano, Arsenal agreed terms with in the January transfer window. They made a bid of £70 million that was rejected, and it remains to be seen if Arsenal will return with an official bid, but the interest is still there. Moises Caicedo will be even more expensive, having signed a brand new contract, but after seeing our performance against Man City, it's no surprise why Arsenal want a profile like Caicedo. As we have seen time and time again, he's a comfortable ball carrier. 4 out of 4 dribbles against Man United in an FA Cup semi-final. Arsenal's current midfield is very stiff, and a profile like Caicedo or Rice could definitely be game changers. But also in terms of the number 8 targets, Mason Mount definitely stands out straight away. But with Chelsea about to appoint Maurizio Pochettino, is he still going to be available? If so, I can totally understand why Mikel Arteta wants him. Mount, another player very comfortable in terms of turning under pressure, and likewise is Mohamed Kudus, but with him being from the Eredivisie, with the elite stage that Arsenal are at right now, signing players out of the Premier League might not be the wisest move. We've seen the likes of Fabio Vieira and the time they can take to adapt, and at this stage of the project, Arsenal need ready-made players. And the prime example, of course, is Leandro Trossard, a Premier League proven signing that has made an impact straight away, and even against Man City off the bench, one of Arsenal's few shining lights, he was able to get yet another assist. He now has 10 assists in total, only behind Saka and De Bruyne, with 8 of those assists coming for Arsenal after signing in January. Every time this guy plays, he makes an impact straight away. As much as we love Gabriel Jesus, Trossard might be a bit more of an effective player, and in the past 4 games where he's not started, Arsenal have not won a single game. Gabriel Jesus has definitely elevated the Arsenal attack, but Trossard playing as the false 9 at this stage might be a better solution. I also want to give praise to Reiss Nelson, yet again off the bench with another impressive cameo. Even though the game was over, this guy wasn't giving up. His dribbling was fantastic, and he was one of the few Arsenal players able to play through Man City's press, leaving Rodri and Bernardo Silva in his dust. Reiss Nelson has so much potential, and at 23 years of age, I think Mikel Arteta can make him into something special, but he is out of contract at the end of the season, and even though Arsenal have offered a new deal, Nelson does have some tempting offers, with the likes of Brighton being standouts. Now let's move on to the other Arsenal news today, and even though the hopes are fading, all focus remains on a title race, because even after losing to Man City, Arsenal still are technically top of the Premier League, with 75 points, 2 points ahead of City, but of course those guys have 2 games in hand, and they next play on Sunday in a massive game against Fulham away from home, and they might be in a top half and they might be a decent team, but Man City are going to blow them out of the water. With the form these guys are in and how they played against Arsenal, with the robots like Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland, it feels inevitable that Man City will take the first place. And here's the remaining fixtures. Arsenal definitely have the harder fixtures. Chelsea at home, Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Forest away and Wolves at home, whereas City's only real hard games might be Brentford away and Brighton away. Will they drop points? Potentially so, but Arsenal can't focus on them. Instead, we need to focus on Chelsea next Tuesday, a team that currently set 11th in the Premier League, not even on 40 points, and 10 points off the relegation zone. But if Arsenal want to have any chance remaining, they need to win this game. And as Mikel Arteta says after the game, the experts said we'll finish 7th. Never write us off. Even though as Arsenal fans there might not be much hope, there is still an opportunity. Arsenal need to maximise their points, and hope that if Man City drop points, there is some level of possibility that something might happen. If we don't win the Premier League title, they face the prospect of being top of the league for the longest period of time without winning the league. 93% in total. People are now going to have 2 different perspectives. On one side, people are going to call Arsenal bottle jobs, but on the other side, as Jamie Carragher says, I cannot help but feel some sympathy for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal's players. In the pre-Guardiola era, Arsenal's points tally would still have them on course for a Premier League title. Arsenal have proven to be a good team at the wrong time. Man City are monsters. These guys have won 2 titles in a row, trying to make it 3, on course for a potential treble, and Guardiola is 7 years into his project. And then you have Arsenal, their first ever title charge in so long. They have been perfect for so much, but in these past few games, they have fallen off. But pre-Guardiola, every team used to have this. Even the Invincibles had their blips. But where those guys had other teams, we are up against Pep Guardiola's Man City, who are ruthless and are killers. Regardless of how you see this season, Arsenal have taken another step in the right direction. Top 4 battle last year to fighting for a title. At the start of the season, if I told you that Arsenal would secure Champions League football with 5 games spare, and you'd still be disappointed, it shows how far Arsenal have come. Our ambitions have certainly changed, and whatever happens towards the end of the season, just like last year when that was meant to be the end of Arsenal, this Arsenal team will invest again, they will learn from experiences and rise once again. But what do you guys make of this season? From where Arsenal were last season, is securing Champions League football and fighting for a title a failure or success? But that is the video there and there, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you have, don't forget to smash a like and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you want to follow your boy on all of his social medias, then the links are down below in the description. But that was all of today's latest Arsenal news, and yes, I get Arsenal fans are devastated right now. It's painful, but there might be some hope of a title there. It's small, it's fading, but all we can do now is focus on Chelsea and hope that City drop points. It is what it is, and I will see you next time. Take care, in a bit.